very good morning to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Thursday morning. Please, my apologies. It seems I've got a bit of a sore throat. I've got this bug that's going around at the moment. It seems really weird. Once the good weather has come, everyone's starting to feel ill. God knows what it is. COVID again, who knows? But anyway, so my apologies if I sound a little bit croaky. Look, if you're new to the channel and if you like what you see and what you hear, please do become a subscriber of the channel. Easy to do so, free of charge, doesn't cost you anything to become a subscriber. All my content is free, so it'd be fantastic if you joined the West Ham Voice party. Also, if you can see a button down there, a like button, please do hit the like button, and there's a little bell notification that you can click on, which will tell you when the next show is coming up. So what are we going to talk about this morning? Well, the obvious one that we got to start with, of course, is the story that came out last night that, according to reports, apparently NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal is in talks to purchase a stake in little old West Ham United. Look, the 52-year-old who won 4 NBA titles during his illustrious career reportedly became interested in becoming a shareholder at the club after going to one of our games last season. O'Neal would become the latest former American sports star to invest in the English game, following the likes of ex-NFL hero Tom Brady and basketball icon LeBron James. The 7'1" ex-basketball player, who now covers sport as a broadcaster for TNT, loves football and has been discussing putting serious cash into West Ham United. It's quoted as, or a source is quoted as saying, he went to a game at the end of last season, loved it, and now it's a case of the financials, whether the financials stack up for him. I don't know what to make of this, to be quite honest with you. Look, we do know that West Ham United are looking for new investors. But would Shaquille O'Neal make enough of a bid to buy up, say, 25% of the club that's been suggested that might be available? Look, if West Ham are worth something like £800 million, give or take, you're going to need 200 million to buy that 25% stake. The alternative, of course, is that he could look at Vanessa Gold's offer. She's got around 10% of shares to sell and has been looking for a buyer for some time. Now, that could be worth around about £80 million, which might be more appealing. Look, he's worth apparently £500 million. You know, so if he went and bought 25% of West Ham, that's a large chunk of his wealth to actually part ways with. However, 80 million might be something that might indeed tempt him. Look, it's a great story. It certainly fits in with the theme of this video today, which is a roundup of all the transfer news, of course, or the transfer gossip, of course. But it's a roundup of what's fake, what's phantom, what's real. I guess we can only establish that over the next few months whilst the transfer window is open. But a great story nonetheless. Imagine what he would make of meeting David Sullivan in the boardroom. You know, one down here, one up there. Anyway, let's move on with some of the transfer stories, which, to be quite honest with you, you know, are becoming a little bit sillier and sillier as time goes by. But the one thing is for certain, the media mainstream seems to be hell-bent on pushing the narrative that all our best players are available whenever a transfer window is open. And it's as much as I keep telling you lot not to get carried away with it and get upset with it, it actually ends up winding me up as well. And I guess the funniest story so far this week has been the apparent interest in Jarrod Bowen from Tottenham Hotspur. Apparently, Spurs made an inquiry as to the availability of Bowen, and they were told quite categorically he's not for sale, or rather, he's not for sale to you at any cost, should have been the answer. Look, last week we had Newcastle apparently having internal discussions over making a bid for Bowen, and now it's Spurs. And I dare say Liverpool are going to come knocking on the door as well. I dare say we'll hear a story about Liverpool being interested in this summer window as well. I think it's nonsense. I don't think we have to sell him, and let's move on. There's been a whole other issue this week over Mohamed Kudus and his apparent release clause that's been quoted by a Sky Sports presenter in Germany, Florian Plettenberg. Look, he insists apparently the 85 million release clause is available in this summer window. I've asked, and it's been suggested that he's got it slightly wrong. And that the release clause is indeed not valid until the summer of 2025. Look, Plettenberg is meant to be close to Tim Steidten, but the big question is, or big question begs, why would Steidten want to push such a story to someone like that? After all, that would be going directly against the wishes of Julian Lopetegui, who, when he joined West Ham United, said that one of the players that he was really looking forward to working with was Mohamed Kudus. So I think I don't believe that his release clause is up and running now. I think it is set for the summer of 2025, and the proof of that is we talked about this before. A similar release clause was put in Paquetá's contract, and it was apparently the same thing. They would have to play for the club for 2 seasons before that release clause became available. And Paquetá, you know, if the whole issue with the betting issues, etc., wasn't hanging over his head, we believe he would have been the player that be sold this summer. And the same applies to Kudus. We believe that next summer is the summer where the release clause can be triggered. But to be quite honest with you, to be fair, release clause or not, it doesn't stop any club from knocking on the door and making a bid for Kudus or any other player for that matter, whether that release clause is in his contract or any player's contract, a release clause. It makes absolutely no odds whatsoever. If a club truly believes that they can prize a player away, they're going to make a bid regardless. And if it's a massively substantial offer, that might be the only thing that might remotely tempt West Ham United. Look, a release clause really is only valid for 2 things. The first is that West Ham would be guaranteed the value of that release clause if it's met. And the second is, if a club were to match it, then West Ham would have an obligation to allow the player to speak to the club who made the offer. But that doesn't mean we have to sell the player, nor does it mean that the player himself might want to go to the club who made the bid in the first place. Look, an offer may come in from a club that Kudus might turn around and go, I don't want to play for them. So let's not get too hung up about it either way. It's a distraction, and I, for one, do not believe for a moment that we need to sell either Kudus or Bowen or any other top player in this summer transfer window. I get that there's a suggestion we need to bolster the transfer kitty given that is apparently quite low. And I know we were all expecting, as I mentioned about Paquetá, we were all expecting a windfall by selling him this summer. But we knew that there was a good chance that Paquetá may not have been sold this summer because of the betting irregularities that we were all made aware of this time last year. So we knew that was hovering over his head. So I'm sure we've made contingencies otherwise. I'm confident that there will be adequate sales from players within the squad to build that transfer kitty up. We could get, for example, 35 million for Naya Gerd. We already got 9 million for Thilo Kehrer. Although it's a small amount, we've got 1.2 million for Nathan Trott. Other players that are being linked to move, such as Flynn Downs at 15 million, Danny Ings at 6 million, Emerson 12 million, Zuma, yes, Zuma at around 15 million, and Ben Rama for another 15 million. That in itself can generate at least another 100-odd million pounds, give or take. So I think we're going to be okay. I don't think we're going to be forced to end up selling any of our big players. Having said that, of course, there is also the story which has gained interest, which is gaining momentum, that there's interest from Man United and their manager, Erik ten Hag, for Edson Alvarez. We all know that Ten Hag worked with Alvarez when they were both at Ajax before Ten Hag moved to Man United. If Man United are willing to pay around double what we paid for Alvarez, then there's a feeling that we might just decide to let him go. I made myself clear in a show last week where I said, I thought he was one of our most important signings last summer. And he gave us that steal. He gave us something different that we'd been missing in the middle of the park for quite some time. So I would be rather disappointed if he was sold. I'd rather he stayed. But if we got 55, 60, 65 million pounds for him, that would almost double our outlay for him last summer. And that can easily go towards bringing in 2 players in this transfer window. But with the hamstring injury he's just sustained whilst playing for Mexico, there's now a chance that any possible deal could be scuppered. Just on the injury, by the way, it looks as if he'll be out of action for something like 6 weeks, meaning that he'll definitely miss the rest of the Copa America. And it's highly unlikely he was going to make West Ham's American tour that we have in July anyway. But it's hoped that he'll be back for pre-season at the end of July. But when it comes back to transfers, let's not forget that the transfer window is open until the end of August. So he could come back in time, and Man United could sort of generate interest again or making noises again for buying him. So let's see what happens when he's back from injury. Now, other players rumored to be on their way out from West Ham. No surprise, I've already mentioned Danny Ings, Flynn Downs, all been linked with moves to Southampton, which could generate a total value of something like, what, 20, 21 million pounds? We'll have to wait and see whether any action happens on either of them. And of course, earlier in the week, there was apparent interest in Emerson from both Italian clubs from Milan. So let's see if that materializes. And then, of course, there's Naifer Gerd, who we just heard has changed his agents, which ramps up the thinking that we're going to part ways with him in this summer transfer window. And it will come as no surprise. I've said several times over, and many others have said, that a Gerd wants to leave. Interest from him in his previous club, Rennes. Clubs from Italy and Spain apparently interested. And there's still that Saudi money, or Saudi clubs, should I say, that are apparently interested in him too. Now, another player, and I know you'll laugh, but apparently last season or last summer, a story came out that suggested that Kurt Zouma had turned down a transfer offer thought to be in the Saudi League. And it's been suggested that he may turn down a transfer offer again this summer should an offer come in. Look, to be honest, things are looking very different for Kurt Zouma in the coming season. Whereas last season, he was virtually assured game time under David Moyes, who clearly favoured him. It's unlikely to be the same issue or the same case this coming season under Lopetegui. We know that West Ham are prioritising 2 centre-backs. That means that Kurt Zouma is, if he stays at West Ham United, is not going to get an awful lot of game time. But I guess, you know, he won't care if he's on 125 grand a week sitting on the bench. But the thing is, if there is a Saudi offer looming, he would be unwise not to take it, because he will get paid an awful lot more money every week to either play or sit on the bench. Another story, it looks as if we've lost the battle to keep Ben Johnson. It seems now that Ben Johnson has decided that he won't agree to any further offers from West Ham. It's been ongoing for well over a year now. The latest round of negotiations have failed to materialise to anything, and it looks as if Ipswich Town might be now the club winning the race to sign him on a 4-year deal. Now, this is despite Julian Lopetegui's attempts to persuade the player that he would get to stay at the club. But the one thing that Johnson wanted was not only money, 60 grand a week. I don't know how close we came to that. I've no idea. But he also wanted assurances for game time. Look, I don't think any player in this day and age, especially with the way we play with squads, especially Lopetegui, way we play with squads, you know, can guarantee him starting game time. But I'm sure Lopetegui could have guaranteed that he'll play as much as possible, because we know Lopetegui likes to use his subs. But it's a shame. Another player, of course, which came up the other day is Nottingham Forest are apparently interested in Mikel Antonio. I don't know how true that is. It could possibly be. Seems Nottingham Forest just buy anyone and everyone at this moment in time, despite the fact that they have issues with financial fair play and PSR, etc. So what about some links to players coming in? And we've got several. I'm not going to go over the Callum Marshall and Dominic Calvin-Lewin links, to be honest with you, because I think those are the types of things that are fake, red herrings. I don't think we've got an interest in either of them. I think, you know, given their age and Dominic Calvin-Lewin is younger, but given their record of injuries, etc., I really don't think they're realistic targets. Certainly not under the new approach that Tim Steidten makes with regards to player purchases, where he uses data-driven analysis to make those purchases. Other stories I'm not paying too much attention to at this stage include Arsenal's Reece Nelson, Man City's João Cancelo, and Watford's Ismail Konate. Now, the last one merely because apparently we're hearing that Marseille have won the race to sign him. But the stories that do interest me are of strikers Jonathan David of Lille, Adam Hlozek of Leverkusen, winger Jaden Philogene from Hull City, and left backs Jaden Oosterwolde of Fenerbahce, Sergio Gomez from Man City, and Juan Miranda, who is currently at Real Betis. But first, let's deal with the player who could end up being our third summer signing after Guilherme and Foderingham. And that, of course, is Max Kilman. Now, we have apparently prepared to come back with a third and final bid, which apparently includes a cash and player swap deal. Now, I joked online that the swap deal could be for Kurt Zouma. It kind of makes sense. You know, you buy a centre-back, you give him a centre-back, a crooked one at that. But in all honesty, it could be a number of players, including Maxwell Cornet, Danny Ings, or even Said Benrahma, that could be offered as a swap deal. I don't know if that rumour is true or not, but apparently that's the latest. Look, after making an initial bid of £25 million, which was rejected, West Ham are looking to come up with a package that will take the deal to something like £35 million. And if a player like Benrahma or Cornet is added in, then I can see this one perhaps getting over the line. It seems that Lopetegui wants the player at West Ham, and if we can part with as little money as possible by adding a player into the equation, then West Ham might deem it to be a deal worth doing, and so might Wolves. West Ham fans are still split over Kilman, whether he's worth pursuing or not. But many Wolves fans would admit that he did play some of his best football whilst Lopetegui was at the club. As for the left back slot, there's suggestions that we could be going in for a number of different left backs, given that there's a rumour, insistent rumour that Emerson might return to Italy. And the left backs that we've got in mind, the first is Jaden Oosterwolde, the 23-year-old player at Fenerbahce. He developed at the Dutch Academy FC20, and as part of his development went on loan to Italian club Parma. In 2022, he signed for Parma on a permanent basis for 3.3 million euros, spent half a season there before being sold to Turkish club Fenerbahce in January of 2023 for 6 million euros. He's made 48 appearances for the Turkish club, and is already rumoured to have doubled his value again. In addition to playing at left back, he's capable of playing at left wing and even as a centre back. Now, despite Parma being in Serie B when he signed for them, his abilities shone through for Fenerbahce to be so confident in signing him. So he's got great ball skills, great ball tackling abilities. He started as a winger in his career, so he loves to attack and is a very decent crosser of the ball. But his marauding in attacks has often left him vulnerable at the back. He's valued now at something like 15 to 20 million euros. So let's see what happens there. Next up, I think this is an interesting one. It's Sergio Gomez from Man City. Now, Man City apparently are willing to listen to offers of around £13 million. But the likes of Roma or Real Sociedad are also linked to him. He joined Man City from Anderlecht in the summer of 2022, but he's not been a regular for the club with just 38 appearances in 2 seasons. He's a good defender, great attacking potential as well. He should have been Pep Guardiola's ideal left back, but with so much competition for places at the club, I guess it comes as no surprise really that he's hardly had much game time. He's got great pace. He makes intelligent runs behind defensive defenses. And ironically, it was Vincent Kompany who changed Gomez's position in Anderlecht before he went to Man City, because he used to play up front. He used to play across the front line. But Kompany saw something different in him, hence converting him to a left back. He can not only attack, he scores and provides plenty of assists as well. He'd be a bargain for West Ham at £13 million, and that would be quite a good deal to have. He's only 23 years of age, and clearly Pep Guardiola would have seen something in him in order to get him at the club in the first place. And then the third left back is Juan Miranda, who's currently at Real Betis. The 24-year-old is a product of the Real Betis youth system, but moved to Barcelona at the age of 16. He only ever made 4 appearances for the senior Barcelona team and then moved back to Real Betis in 2021. He's made 1 senior appearance for the Spanish national side, but it's rumoured, and that was back in 2021, but it's rumoured that, you know, if he's a bit more consistent, he can get back into that Spain squad. Portuguese club FC Porto apparently have an interest in the player, but West Ham are rumoured to have coming in late to try and make a bid for the player. Well, the player himself, because he's a free agent. He'll be a free agent from the 1st of July. He's good attack-minded left back, and his stats bear testament to that, with 8 goals and 11 assists in Real Betis appearances. Sorry, with 8 goals and 11 assists in 111 Real Betis appearances. He's been compared to Marcos Alonso, who used to play for Chelsea. Now, it's known that Lopetegui favours his fullbacks to move forward into attacking areas, and a player like Miranda could suit Lopetegui's style quite clearly. So does Gomez's, to be quite honest with you. Other players, what about midfield? Well, there's rumour that we're interested in left winger. Jaden Philogene from Hull City. He developed in the youth ranks at Aston Villa and spent time on loan at various championship clubs such as Stoke City and Cardiff. He was sold to Hull in the summer of 2023 for €5.8 million. He's got a contract till 2026, and he's now valued at something like £13 million, €15 million. He made 32 appearances for Hull last season, scoring 12 goals with 6 assists, which is pretty decent. Despite his attacking potential, he's a very disciplined player and knows the value of his defensive duties from midfield as much as his attacking duties. He has pace to burn, great with both feet, with a very powerful shot to boot. He didn't quite get his chance under Unai Emery at Aston Villa, but he has demonstrated what he's capable of since moving to Hull City. And at £13 million, the 22-year-old who's represented England at all levels up to under 21s could be an astute addition to our squad as well. And what about the strikers? Well, the first of the 2 strikers that I want to talk about is a player that we all know about, Adam Hlozek. We had interest in him when he was still at Sparta Prague. In 132 appearances, he scored 40 goals and 36 assists. And in July 2022, he moved to Bayer Leverkusen, ironically, whilst Tim Steidten was still at the club. So I'm imagining it must have been Steidten that scouted the player and took him to Leverkusen. He's made 80 appearances so far for Leverkusen, scoring 14 goals with 11 assists. But he's not been a regular starter for the club. He's only made something like 5 starts for the senior team in the league and 5 starts for in Europe as well. Hlozek, he uses his physical skills to great effect. He excels in aerial duels, holds up play really well, bringing his teammates into the game. And although he can play out wide, he's best suited to play in a central striker role. He's got excellent ball control. Close control allows him to create space and take on defenders. And he's still got 3 years left on his contract, and he's still only 21 years of age. A possible deal of something like €15 million may tempt the player and Leverkusen to let him go. Granted, Leverkusen are going to be in the Champions League next season, but after making just 5 starts, as I've mentioned, he may well favour a move where he will almost definitely get an awful lot more playing time under Lopetegui at West Ham United. Steidten must know him. You know, I'm thinking, and I've tried to check, but I know they were both at the club at the same time at Leverkusen, so I imagine he was the one that signed him through the German club. And then finally, Another player that we've been linked to many times in the past is 24-year-old striker Jonathan David, who's been with Lille since the 2020, and he's been prolific for them, for the French club, with 82 goals and 18 assists in 193 appearances. That is pretty good. That's almost 1 in 2 games. He's been valued at up to something like 50 million euros, but with a year left on his contract, there's a suggestion that he could be available for about 25 million euros. I'm not sure about this, but I guess time will tell. Between him and Hlozek, David is a more all-rounded striker. He's great off the ball, good movement, makes intelligent runs, clinical finisher, and although he plays primarily in a central striking role, he can also play out wide as well when needed. He's got great great defense from the front. He defends from the front on the offensive press. He's more an accomplished striker than Hlozek, to be honest with you. But I know there are an awful lot of clubs interested in him as well. So we would do well to get him. To be quite honest with you, though, although he's the more accomplished striker, I think even Hlozek might be a really good addition to West Ham United. That's it for now. There'll be loads more stories coming up, but let's not forget the big one. Shaquille O'Neal is going to become one of our shareholders. I don't know if that rumor is true, but it's a great story nonetheless. Do join me for more videos as they come up. I'll probably do another one later today, if not on Friday. So do join me for that, and I'll see you all very soon.